The heat was a physical presence on the tarmac of Fort Bragg. It pressed down from a bleached white sky, shimmered in visible waves above the black asphalt of the parking lot, and baked the smell of pine needles and diesel fuel into the thick, humid air. In the distance, the rhythmic thumping of helicopter blades beat a steady pulse against the monotonous drone of cicadas. It was a sound so common it had become a form of silence. She sat on a simple metal bench at the shuttle stop, a lone figure in a sea of uniformed motion. Her name was Anya, and she looked like she belonged to the heat and the quiet. Her hair, a nondescript brown with threads of gray at the temples, was pulled back in a severe, functional knot. She wore faded gray sweatpants and a plain, dark blue t-shirt that had seen too many washes. On her feet were a pair of worn running shoes, the soles smoothed by countless miles. To the casual observer, she was invisible. Another civilian contractor, perhaps, or the wife of a soldier, waiting patiently for the on-base transport. She held a worn paperback book in her lap, its spine broken and its pages softened by use, but she was not reading. Her eyes, a pale and startling shade of blue, were not focused on the text. They moved with a slow, methodical rhythm, scanning the environment. She noted the security camera mounted on the corner of the nearby administrative building, its lens a dark, unblinking eye. She tracked the board gait of a young private walking guard duty near the perimeter fence, his rifle held loosely, his posture slumped with the lethargy of a long, hot shift. She observed the family piling out of a minivan, the father in his crisp uniform, the mother wrestling with a stroller, the two small children already whining from the oppressive warmth. Every detail was absorbed, catalogued, and dismissed. It was a habit etched into her very being, as unconscious as breathing. Her posture was the only thing that betrayed the illusion of mediocrity. Even while seated on the hard bench, her spine was perfectly straight, her shoulders squared but relaxed. There was no fidgeting, no shifting of weight. She occupied her space with an economy of motion that spoke of immense physical control, a stillness that was not passive but coiled. A cloud of dust and bravado announced their arrival before they were fully in view. A black, heavily modified pickup truck, jacked up on oversized tires, swung into a reserved parking spot with a squeal of rubber. The music thumping from its speakers was a bass-heavy assault, a sonic declaration of presence. 3 men emerged, laughing loudly. They were young, all of them. They wore the crisp, new uniforms of second lieutenants, the gold bars on their collars so shiny they seemed to glitter with self-importance. They carried themselves with the unearned confidence of men who had been given authority but had not yet faced the responsibility that came with it. The one who had been driving was clearly the leader. He was taller than the other two, with a square jaw and hair cut so short it was little more than a shadow on his scalp. His name, stitched in black thread above his right breast pocket, was Drake. He moved like he owned the ground he walked on, his chest puffed out, his swagger a performance for his two sycophantic companions. They strode past the waiting family, their loud conversation filled with crude jokes and complaints about their recent training exercises. They did not lower their voices. They did not acknowledge the mother who pulled her children closer, away from their path. They were the center of their own universe, and everyone else was merely an orbiting spectator. Anya watched them approach, her expression unchanging. Her gaze lingered on them for a moment longer than it had on the guard or the family. She catalogued their posture, their tones of voice, the way their eyes darted around, not with awareness, but with a restless search for attention. She saw their arrogance as a uniform they wore more proudly than the one issued to them by the army. Drake's eyes fell upon her. He slowed his pace, a smirk spreading across his face. He nudged one of his friends, a shorter lieutenant with a weaselly face. "Well, well. Look what we have here," Drake said, his voice loud enough for everyone at the shuttle stop to hear. "Lost, ma'am." Anya did not respond immediately. She simply looked at him, her pale blue eyes giving nothing away. The silence stretched, just for a second, but it was enough to make the air feel thicker. She closed her book, the soft sound of the cover meeting the pages seeming unnaturally loud. She placed it beside her on the bench. "I am waiting for the shuttle," she said. Her voice was low and even, devoid of any inflection. It was a simple statement of fact. Drake laughed, a harsh, braying sound. His friends snickered along with him. "The shuttle. This is a restricted access area. For military personnel. You look a little past your prime for basic training, Grandma." The insult was designed to sting, to provoke. It was a test of dominance, a casual cruelty tossed out for the amusement of his pack. The mother with the children shot him a disapproving look, then quickly looked away, not wanting to draw their attention. Anya's expression remained placid. "I have clearance." "Oh, you have clearance?" Drake mocked, stepping closer. He loomed over her, deliberately using his height to intimidate. "Let me see it. Let's see your credentials." This was the first real escalation. A second lieutenant had no authority to demand identification from a civilian on base without cause, especially not in this manner. It was a gross overstep, a petty abuse of his newly acquired rank. Anya did not reach for a wallet or an ID. She simply met his gaze. "That is not necessary. The shuttle will be here in 5 minutes. I will be on my way." She was giving him an out. A clear, simple path to de-escalation. He could have walked away, satisfied with his little display of power, and the incident would have been over. Her calm denial was not a challenge, it was a boundary. But Drake did not see a boundary. He saw weakness. He saw a middle-aged woman in sweatpants who was refusing to bow to his authority. Her stillness, her lack of fear, he misinterpreted as insolence. It infuriated him. "Not necessary," he echoed, his voice hardening. "I'll be the judge of that. I think you're a security risk. You could be hiding something under that baggy shirt." He gestured dismissively at her worn t-shirt. "We've had intel about civilians trying to smuggle contraband. Stand up. We're going to search you." His two friends moved to flank him, their expressions shifting from amusement to a kind of thuggish seriousness. They were taking their cues from him, their own insecurities fueling their aggression. Anya remained seated. "You are not military police. You do not have the authority to conduct a search." Her voice was still calm, but there was a new edge to it, a clinical precision that would have warned a wiser man. "You are in violation of Article 93 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, cruelty and maltreatment. I suggest you and your men walk away." The mention of the specific UCMJ article stunned Drake for a second. He hadn't expected her to know that. It only served to anger him further. Who was this woman to quote regulations at him? "Is that a threat?" he sneered, leaning down until his face was only a foot from hers. His breath smelled of stale coffee and mint gum. "You're threatening a commissioned officer?" "That's Article 89, ma'am. Disrespect toward a superior commissioned officer. Now you're in real trouble." He had it wrong, of course. She was not military personnel under his command. Article 89 did not apply. But he was not interested in being correct. He was interested in being dominant. "I am not threatening you," Anya stated calmly. "I am providing you with information. You have two options. You can walk away, or you can face the consequences of your actions." Not loud, not angry, just final. This was the point of no return. The out she had offered was now closed. For Drake, backing down now, in front of his friends and the other people watching, was unthinkable. His fragile ego could not withstand it. Consequences. He laughed, a raw, ugly sound. "You'll be the one facing consequences." He straightened up and glanced at his two lieutenants. "She's refusing a lawful order. We have reason to believe she's concealing a weapon or contraband. Restrain her." The two men hesitated for a fraction of a second. This was crossing a line. Physically putting hands on a civilian woman was a serious matter. But a glance at Drake's furious expression was all it took to override their caution. They were followers, and their leader had given a command. One moved to her left, the other to her right. The one on the left, the weaselly one, reached out and grabbed her arm just above the elbow. His grip was surprisingly strong, meant to hurt. The other grabbed her right arm in a similar fashion. This was the line. The final, irrevocable crossing. The moment physical contact was made. Anya did not resist their grip. She did not struggle. For a moment, she allowed them to hold her, to pull her slightly forward on the bench. And then, the switch flipped. It was not a dramatic, visible transformation. It was a series of microscopic, internal shifts, imperceptible to the untrained eye. Her breathing, which had been slow and even, hitched for a single, sharp intake of air, then settled into a controlled, shallow rhythm designed for maximum oxygenation with minimal movement. The muscles in her back and shoulders, previously relaxed, tightened into plates of solid steel. Her weight shifted from the center of her seat to the balls of her feet, even though she was still sitting. Her pale blue eyes, which had been observant, went completely flat. The person was gone, the operator was present. All emotion, all thought, all personality was submerged beneath a layer of pure, cold function. Drake smirked, triumphant. See. Not so tough now, he reached forward, his fingers hooking into the collar of her dark blue t-shirt. Let's see what you're hiding. With a sudden, violent yank, he tore the fabric. The worn cotton gave way with a sickening ripping sound that cut through the afternoon haze. The shirt was not pulled off, but the back was shredded open, from the collar down to the middle of her spine, exposing the skin beneath. The world seemed to slow down. In that sliver of a second, Anya registered everything. The sharp gasp from the mother with the stroller. The widening eyes of the young private at the fence, who had now turned to watch. The triumphant, ugly leer on Drake's face. The feel of the hot, humid air on her newly exposed back. The tightening grip of the two lieutenants on her arms. Then, her world sped up. The lieutenant on her left was the first. Anya's left hand, which had been resting limply, snapped up. It was not a punch. Her fingers, moving with surgical precision, drove into the cluster of nerves on the inside of his wrist, the median nerve. Simultaneously, her thumb clamped down on the pressure point below his thumb. The man's eyes went wide with a pain he had never imagined. It was not a dull ache, it was a white-hot, electric shock that shot up his arm and exploded in his brain. His grip vanished. His entire arm went numb. Before he could even process the pain, Anya twisted his wrist inward at an unnatural angle, using his own body's structure against him. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the asphalt with a strangled cry, clutching his now useless arm. 1. The lieutenant on her right reacted a fraction of a second later, his mind struggling to catch up. He tried to tighten his grip, to pull her off balance. It was like trying to move a block of granite. Anya, pivoting on her right hip while still seated, drove her right elbow backward into his solar plexus. The impact was precise. All the air left his body in a silent, desperate whoosh. As he doubled over, gasping like a fish on a dock, Anya's right hand slid down his arm, caught his elbow joint, and hyperextended it just enough. There was no pop, no break. Just pure, controlled leverage that sent a fresh wave of agony through him. He crumpled to the ground beside his friend, curling into a fetal position, fighting for a breath that would not come. 2. The entire sequence had taken less than 2 seconds. Drake stood frozen, his hand still holding the torn piece of her t-shirt. The triumphant smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of stunned disbelief. His brain could not reconcile the image of the meek, middle-aged woman with the hyper-efficient violence he had just witnessed. He reacted on instinct, the primitive fight-or-flight response kicking in. He chose fight. With a guttural roar of rage and confusion, he lunged at her. It was a clumsy, telegraphed attack. Anya rose from the bench to meet him, not by stepping back, but by stepping into his momentum. As he reached for her, she sidestepped just enough for him to pass, her left hand chopping down on the back of his neck at the base of the skull, a brachial stun. His forward momentum faltered. His vision momentarily blurred with black spots. In that instant of disorientation, Anya hooked her right leg behind his, pivoted on her left foot, and used his own weight and forward motion to execute a flawless hip throw. Drake, for all his size and strength, felt as if he were flying. He hit the asphalt hard, the impact knocking the remaining wind from his lungs. Before he could even try to move, Anya was on him. She did not strike him again. She simply settled her weight onto him, her left knee pinning his right bicep to the ground, her right knee pressing firmly into his sternum. Her left hand cupped the back of his head, controlling his movement, while the edge of her right hand rested lightly against the side of his throat, just above his carotid artery. It was not a choke. It was a promise. 3. The entire confrontation, from the moment Drake tore her shirt to the moment he was pinned and helpless on the ground, had lasted no more than 4 seconds. And then, silence. The cicadas still buzzed. The distant helicopter still thumped. But at the shuttle stop, the world had gone utterly still. The two lieutenants were on the ground, one groaning and clutching his wrist, the other still struggling to breathe. The mother stood with her hand over her mouth, her children hiding behind her legs. The young private by the fence was now standing ramrod straight, his rifle held at a port arms position, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. Anya remained on top of Drake, her breathing perfectly even, her expression a blank mask of professional calm. She simply held him there, a statue of absolute control. Her torn shirt gaped open, revealing the skin of her back to the harsh sunlight. And on that skin, just below her right shoulder blade, was a tattoo. It was not a large or colorful piece. It was small, subtle, and inked in a faded black that suggested it was very old. It was a complex and esoteric design, a stylized omega symbol, cradled within the wings of a silent, diving owl, its talons open. Intertwined with the design was a single, cryptic phrase in Latin, Silentium estate tellum. Silence is a weapon. Few people in the world would have recognized that symbol. It was not the insignia of any official, public-facing military unit. It was a ghost, a myth whispered about in the highest echelons of special operations and intelligence circles. It was the unofficial sigil of a Tier 1 entity so secret that its very existence was denied, a direct action task force that was sent to places that did not exist on any map, to solve problems the world would never know it had. What in the goddamned hell is going on here? The voice cut through the stunned silence like a razor. It was a voice accustomed to instant, unquestioning obedience. It belonged to a man who was now striding toward them from the administrative building. He was in his late 50s, his uniform immaculate despite the heat. The silver eagle on his collar glittered in the sun. He was a full colonel, and his face was a thundercloud of fury. This was Colonel Miller, the base garrison commander. His eyes took in the scene in a single, sweeping glance, the two downed lieutenants, the stunned bystanders, and the woman in the torn shirt pinning a third officer to the ground. His initial assumption was clear from the rage on his face. He was about to verbally destroy whoever had caused this chaos on his watch. He opened his mouth to roar, his gaze fixed on Anya. And then he saw it. His eyes locked onto the tattoo on her back. The fury on his face did not just vanish, it was replaced by something else entirely. The color drained from his cheeks. His jaw went slack. The torrent of rage he was about to unleash died in his throat, choked off by a sudden, dawning horror. His eyes, which had been narrowed in anger, were now wide with disbelief and a deep, profound sense of dread. He stopped dead in his tracks, about 10 feet away. He stared at the tattoo, then at the woman's impassive profile. His mind, trained by 30 years of service and access to the highest levels of security clearance, was frantically connecting dots that few even knew existed. The Omega. The Silent Owl. Silentium estate tellum. He had seen that symbol only once before, in a heavily redacted briefing document in a sensitive compartmented information facility, a document so classified that he was required to read it in a locked room and was forbidden from ever speaking of its contents. It was the mark of the ghosts. Task Force Omega. The President's private scalpel. "Oh, my God," Colonel Miller whispered, the words barely audible. He took a hesitant step forward, his entire demeanor transformed. The furious commander was gone, replaced by a man who looked like he had just seen a deity and found it wanting. Anya, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, slowly, deliberately, removed her knee from Drake's chest. She rose to her feet in a single, fluid motion. She did not look at the colonel. She did not look at Drake, who was now pushing himself up, his face a mixture of pain, humiliation, and utter confusion. Instead, she calmly reached behind her and tried to pull the shredded pieces of her t-shirt together to cover her back. Colonel Miller walked forward, his eyes never leaving her. He ignored the three lieutenants completely, as if they were nothing more than debris. He stopped a respectful distance from her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now quiet, tight, and filled with a deference that bordered on fear. "Ma'am, I am Colonel Miller, the garrison commander." Anya finally turned her head to look at him. Her pale blue eyes met his. "Colonel," she acknowledged. Her tone was flat, noncommittal. Drake, staggering to his feet, saw the colonel's deference and it broke his brain. "Sir," he gasped, pointing a trembling finger at Anya. "This woman. She assaulted us. She refused a lawful order. She—" "Shut your mouth, Lieutenant," Colonel Miller snapped, not even glancing at him. His voice was lethally soft. "You will speak when you are spoken to, and I suspect that will be at your court-martial." He turned his attention back to Anya, his expression one of deep concern and apology. "Ma'am, on behalf of the United States Army, I apologize. Are you injured?" The question was so absurd, given the two men groaning on the ground, that it hung in the air. "I am not," Anya said simply. The wail of a siren, previously distant, grew closer. A pair of military police vehicles pulled up, lights flashing but sirens now silent. Two MPs got out, alert and ready for trouble. They saw the colonel and immediately tensed, their hands going to their sidearms. "Colonel, sir," the senior MP, a staff sergeant, asked, his eyes scanning the scene. "Sergeant," Miller said, his voice a low command. "Take these three officers," he spat the word like it was poison, "into custody. They are to be confined to quarters under guard. They are not to speak to anyone. Is that understood?" "Sir, yes, sir," the sergeant replied, though his face was a mask of confusion. He looked at Drake and his friends, then at Anya. He was trying to piece together the narrative. "Sir," Drake pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. "You don't understand. She attacked us without provocation. We were performing our duties." Colonel Miller turned his head slowly and pinned Drake with a look of pure ice. "Lieutenant Drake," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Do you see that tattoo on her back?" Drake, confused, glanced at Anya's torn shirt, at the small, dark symbol. "It's just a tattoo, sir." Miller let out a short, mirthless laugh. "That, just a tattoo, son, is the sigil for Joint Special Operations Command Task Force Omega. It means that this woman, who you so bravely decided to assault, holds a security clearance that makes a general's look like a public library card. It means she has likely forgotten more about combat than you will ever learn. It means she operates under authority that comes directly from the National Command Authority. And it means that you, Lieutenant, have just committed a career-ending, and possibly life-altering, mistake." The sergeant and his partner froze. Their eyes widened. They had all heard the rumors, the boogeyman stories about clandestine units that operated in the shadows. To see the living proof standing in front of them, dressed in sweatpants, was beyond comprehension. The sergeant's professional demeanor snapped back into place, but now it was laced with a new, profound respect. He and his partner approached the three lieutenants, who were now pale and trembling. "Sirs," the sergeant said, the honorific now sounding like an accusation. "You need to come with us." Drake and his friends offered no resistance. They were led away, their swagger gone, replaced by the shuffling gait of broken men. They looked like ghosts, their futures dissolving before their eyes. The colonel turned back to Anya. The parking lot was now quiet again, save for the low murmur of the gathered bystanders, who were all staring at Anya with a mixture of awe and terror. The mother had her phone out, not recording, but simply holding it, as if unsure what to do. "Ma'am," Miller said again, his voice softer now. "Is there anything you need? A medic? A new shirt? My jacket?" He began to unbutton his uniform jacket. "That is not necessary, Colonel," Anya said, finally managing to tuck the torn flaps of her shirt into her waistband, providing some measure of coverage. "Thank you. We will need a formal statement, for the report," Miller said, already dreading the mountain of paperwork this would generate, paperwork that would likely be classified before the ink was dry. "And we will need to confirm your identity, for the record." It was a formality. He already knew. But procedure was procedure. Anya reached into a small, hidden pocket in the waistband of her sweatpants and produced a simple, plain-looking ID card. It was not a military ID. It had no photo. It just had a name, a number, and a barcode. She handed it to him. Colonel Miller gave the card to the remaining MP. "Run this. Handle it with care." The MP took the card as if it were a holy relic and walked back to his vehicle. He scanned the barcode. Inside the vehicle, his terminal, which was usually a placid green, flashed a stark, crimson red. A series of warnings cascaded across the screen. Access denied. Eyes only. Level 9 clearance. Do not detain. Do not question. Render all assistance. Report scan immediately to SOC Northcom liaison. The MP's blood ran cold. He quickly backed out of the system and got out of the vehicle, his face ashen. He walked back to Colonel Miller and handed the card back, avoiding eye contact with Anya completely. "Sir," the MP said in a low voice meant only for the colonel. The system. It lit up. Red flags everywhere. "I've never seen anything like it." It said. "It said we are to render all assistance and not detain." Miller nodded grimly. He took the card and handed it back to Anya. "As I thought," he cleared his throat. "Ma'am. Anya. Those lieutenants will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the UCMJ. Their careers are over. It will be on their permanent record. They will never hold a command position again. Would you like to press civilian charges as well? For assault?" Anya took her ID card and slipped it back into its hidden pocket. She looked at the direction the 3 lieutenants had been taken. Her expression was unreadable. After a long moment, she shook her head. "No," she said. The colonel was surprised. "No. Ma'am, they humiliated you. They assaulted you." The objective was not punishment, Anya stated, her voice as calm as a frozen lake. It was correction. They believed authority came from their rank. They have been taught that true authority comes from control. Over oneself, and over a situation. The lesson was sufficient. Her words hung in the hot, still air. It was a statement of philosophy, a glimpse into the mindset that had been forged in crucibles he could not even imagine. She was not angry. She was not vengeful. She was a teacher, and the lesson had been a painful but necessary one. The shuttle bus finally arrived, its brakes hissing as it pulled up to the curb. The doors opened with a pneumatic sigh. The few other people waiting for it hesitated, looking at Anya, then at the colonel, unsure of what to do. Anya picked up her paperback book from the bench. She gave Colonel Miller a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Colonel." It was a dismissal. She turned and walked toward the open doors of the shuttle. The other passengers instinctively parted, creating a wide path for her. She stepped up into the bus without a backward glance. As she found a seat by a window, the mother who had witnessed the entire event finally found her voice. She approached Colonel Miller, her own children still clinging to her. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Those men. What they did was horrible. But she. My God, what she did. It was like ballet. Terrifying ballet." Miller watched the shuttle as its doors hissed shut. He looked at the woman. "What you saw, madam, was the difference between a bully and a warrior. Bullies use force to feel strong. Warriors use control to be strong." He turned his gaze back to the shuttle as it pulled away from the curb, gathering speed. Through the window, he could see Anya's silhouette. She had opened her book again and was holding it in her lap, her posture perfectly straight, her head up, watching the world go by. As the bus rounded a corner and disappeared from view, Colonel Miller stood alone in the oppressive heat of the parking lot. He did not salute. A salute was for soldiers, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the woman on that bus was something far beyond a soldier. Instead, he simply stood at attention, a silent, solitary pillar of respect on the hot tarmac, long after she was gone. The lesson, he realized, had not just been for the 3 foolish lieutenants. It had been for everyone.